Okay, so the Eagles extended Jordan Mailata, making him one of the highest paid tackles in the game. But how does that impact DeVonta Smith, and when can we expect his extension to get done? Plus, Sidney Brown expects to be back way earlier than we initially thought. And Howie Roseman isn't done with acquisitions, specifically receiver. So why is trading for this former second-round pick a very realistic possibility? Let's talk about it. But first, let's run it. Hey guys, the weekend is here, and a quick thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Rocket Money, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a sec. But let's start with the potential of a new show with the Kelces called Keeping Up with the Kelces. Or at least that's the rumored name, which would be centered around the life of Jason, Travis, and Jason's wife Kylie. Now, it is just speculation with producers seemingly interested, and although yes, they did an Amazon documentary, I can't imagine they'd be okay with a reality TV show following them around. However, it is more likely that Jason Kelce makes a guest star appearance at WrestleMania this weekend, as reports continue to heat up about a surprise appearance that Jason's there. And I mean, come on, if you're trying to put on the best show in Philly, it's gotta have sexy Batman. Although Lane Johnson's already helped get the festivities started, taking part in a workout collab with WWE's Seth Rollins after getting back from a ski trip in Breckenridge, Colorado with tight end Jack Stoll, which the whole get-together with Rollins really makes sense if you think about it. Because remember, not only does Pave the Lane have a good relationship with former WWE announcer Jim Ross, affectionately known as Good Old JR, but he's also friends with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and even said just a couple years ago in an interview with Trey Wingo that he's always felt like he's had a heart for wanting to be a wrestler, and would love to consider it once he decides to hang him up in the NFL. Not gonna lie, that would be pretty fun to watch. I mean, he's also got his name already with Pave the Lane. I don't know if he'll actually do that, yet he's no doubt the athlete to be able to keep it up. And speaking of a dual sport athlete, congrats to Philly's left tackle Jordan Mailata, after it was officially announced that Mailata signed a 3-year extension worth $66 million that includes $48 million guaranteed and a $20 million signing bonus, as the deal now effectively makes Mailata the 4th highest paid tackle in the league.
Spent a lot of dough. Wow.
Seriously though, good for him. Apparently, with all the excitement, Zach Berman confirmed that the earthquake felt earlier today was the Australian jumping up and down to celebrate his new contract. Whether you believe that or not, it's still a crazy story in Mailata's career. Like the dude literally hadn't played football before getting drafted. Instead, as most of us know, was playing in the rugby league in Australia, until an invite via the International Player Pathway program led to him getting drafted in the 7th round by the Eagles. The insane part is this dude was given a 5.5 prospect grade, which basically means that he was projected to be a practice squad player or at best a low bottom of the roster type of player. And sure, no one really knows how a prospect will do, but the 6'8", 365 blindside protector surely has a Hollywood movie in his future if he wants it. Either way, this move makes a ton of sense because you're locking up your offensive lineman, your left tackle, blindside protector for Jalen, plus let's not forget he's best friends with Landon Dickerson, so the left side of your line is good for years to come. By the way, no, this does not affect DeVonta Smith's extension in a negative way. Howie Roseman is just taking care of business, and Smitty will be next. But we'll get to more of him a bit later. However, talking about protecting the quarterback, Jalen Hurts was recently in Houston continuing to hone his craft while working with quarterback coach Pep Hamilton. Not a bad thing to be getting some extra critique from a dude who's been coaching the quarterback position for over 25 years. And like I've said before, Jalen's going to be different this coming season, really with the entire offense. But fine, if people want to keep hating like The Rock, go ahead and fuel QB1's fire.
You want to know why The Rock was late? He was watching YouTube. Watching Jalen Hurts lose in the playoffs again.
Yes, I realize a lot of it is for show. But still, keep doubting, because Jalen along with Saquon Barkley as the new running back is going to prove unstoppable. Oh yeah, it seems like just about every other day we get a new Saquon workout video. Look, it's pretty easy to tell that 26 is the happiest that he's been in almost forever, and he's definitely wanting to take advantage of this opportunity. On that note, what do you guys think his over-under for rushing yards total this season should be? I mean, no disrespect to DeAndre Swift, he's definitely a good back, yet everyone realizes he ain't no Saquon Barkley. What are we thinking, 1,500 yards? 2,000 yards? Let me know in the comments. Speaking of that hype and excitement, despite tearing his ACL late in the season, Sidney Brown has been rehabbing really well and can't wait to get back on the field.
If you really want me to, no, I feel great. I've been kind of in and out of Philly. I worked with a lot of the trainers back at my home school in Illinois, and Jerome and Tom and the crew here has been working real hard with me. So I feel like I'm miles ahead of where I should really be, and I will be ready for when the season comes.
I love it, man. That dude's energy is just contagious. And it was initially thought that he wouldn't be back until October, but based on that interaction, I'd say it's very realistic he'll return by the start of the season. Like y'all already know, I'm a fan of Sidney's energy. Oh yeah, plus we share that whole twin connection thing. so it's understandable that expectations are high. And Brandon Graham recently talked about those expectations, plus what the Birds have to do this upcoming year on SportsCenter.
Expectations are high, as always, every year. Being in Philly, the fan base is, as you know, on top of the media. It's a different thing. It's two of the same. They both passionate in both areas, and so the fans, that's all they got is the Eagles, and Eagles is top dog in Philly. And then the media want to try to find their way to get us to go against each other, even though they are Eagles fans too themselves. But everybody got a job to do, so we got to make sure as a team that we don't let none of the outside noise interfere with what we got going on. And I think that's the hardest part with every team. And as you know, Coach Reed leading the Chiefs as he led, I've been a part of it. I know how he runs his organization, and it's so good to see him, just finally get over that hump that he couldn't get over with the Eagles. But now I'm hoping that we are going on our run too.
Obviously, I'm biased, but it would be pretty cool to see BG behind the desk. And he for sure makes the media better. Although, does Avonte Maddox make the Eagles better? After Philly decided to bring back the 28-year-old on a one-year prove-it deal. Like, Maddox is certainly one of the best slot corners in the game when he's healthy. Yes, I realize health is wealth and the best ability is availability and all that other stuff, but why not bring back a guy who's, a low-risk, high-reward type of signing and great chemistry with the team? Personally, I think it's a solid move, which feels like a great segue into the sponsor of today's video, Rocket Money. I'm not gonna lie, I'm probably not the best when it comes to budgeting and saving money. Sure, I know it's important, but I have this problem of buying all the latest Eagles gear and tickets and memorabilia. Although honestly, I didn't think too much about it until we started having kids, because you parents know exactly how much more expensive those diapers can be. And unfortunately, not everyone can be Howie Roseman when it comes to balancing a budget. Which is why I turned to Rocket Money. Because Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you cancel your subscriptions, lower bills, and really just manage your money better. Now, my personal favorite has been the canceling subscriptions part. I don't know if you're like me, but I'll go on and see a show I like and be like, sure, free trial, why not? And then sadly, I forget about it or even just lose track. But thankfully, Rocket Money safely and securely identifies recurring charges and cancels unwanted subscriptions for you. You can even cancel within the app within just a couple taps. No need to worry about customer service calls or that incredibly hard to find cancellation link. Rocket Money has helped save members an average of $720 a year with over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. Seriously, they're literally saving you time and money. So take control of your finances today by going to rocketmoney.com/Philly Special or just click my link in the description below to get started for free. Now, back to Avonte. I'm not saying Maddox is an automatic lock to start immediately anyway, because he'll certainly have some competition along with the recently signed Tyler Hall. And even Isaiah Rodgers is an option, who I talked about more in a previous video. I get it, he hasn't played much slot, but I think the tools are there to at least consider him in that role. Now, I should also mention potential pickups via the draft, since Andrew DeCecco reported that the Eagles have begun showing quite a bit of interest in Rutgers cornerback Max Melton. I'm sure most of y'all are pretty familiar with his name by now, but just in case you're not, Melton is a 21-year-old 6', 190-pound corner with inside-outside versatility, someone DeCecco described as having tremendous footwork and fluidity at his pro day, and without question, a day-one starter at nickel. And yeah, I'm with you on the idea of getting a bigger slot corner who can match up with whoever ends up inside. Plus, we know Vic Fangio prefers that type of player in his system anyway, while the Rutgers corner typically does his best work in off-coverage situations. Also, Melton tested as the third most athletic cornerback at the Combine, running a 4.39 40 along with a 40-plus inch vertical, so he definitely checks a lot of boxes. However, y'all know I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's a couple areas he needs to work in. The main ones being that scouts have said multiple times that he's not the stickiest in coverage, and then also the fact that he can allow too many slants across his face. I don't know if that's a weird way to say it, but you get the point. It's the off-ball coverage types of things, and he might need to improve in that area. The other area is that he can sometimes rely too much on reading the receiver and not playing the ball, but it is coachable. By the way, for those wondering, based on everything I've seen, Melton is a projected late second round or third round pick. Having said that, how would y'all feel if the Birds took Melton in the draft? And how about receiver, since the Eagles continue to show interest in a variety of targets, such as Texas A&M's Anaya Smith, as well as Western Kentucky's Malachi Corley, and also Tulane's Jaquan Jackson. However, it's the latest trade that shook up the NFL. Okay, I'm sorry, that's probably not the best choice of words with a recent earthquake. But the Stefon Diggs trade from the Bills to the Texans has created an opportunity, with Pro Football Network's Anthony DeBona suggesting the Eagles should trade for DeVonta Smith's former Bama teammate John Metchie, since he could be the odd man out after their latest move. And seeing how the 23-year-old offers dynamic ability along with toughness after the catch and an understanding in the slot, at 5'11", 190 pounds, he'd definitely be worth a call to see what the Texans want for their former second-round pick. Now, I get it. Metchie only has 16 catches for 158 yards in his career so far. Yet let's not forget he tore his ACL before getting drafted and then was diagnosed with leukemia before beating it a year later. So maybe the Texans say no thanks, we're good, and want to see what he has left in the tank. But again, with him having a plethora of options already, maybe they'd be willing to part with the receiver. It's an interesting thought at the very least, which is why I went straight to the source to ask the PFN analyst his thoughts on that move, as well as all the other happenings around the Birds.
It's interesting. I mean, we got to make a point of this because you're not in your car, as people have alluded to or thought that, you don't have anywhere that you live. You're literally just going out of your car. But you're here in the studio setup, so appreciate you joining us for that.
I'm excited to be on, and I'm excited to be in my house that I actually have. I responded to some comments talking about that. I actually do have a house, but I just have two small children running around and a wife, so I try and accommodate for them. I try and make accommodations for Josh. But I'm excited. Let's do this.
A lot to catch up on. Avonte Maddox naturally was the very recent signing. So I'm curious to get your takeaways because we've heard from all ends of the spectrum. I've heard and seen comments of people saying this is a terrible move. He's always injured. I've heard and seen on the flip side of that, people that are saying this is a fantastic move because he can be good and is one of the best if he's healthy and consistent on the field. And then, naturally, a lot that fall right there in the middle. Where are you at on this move, and how much benefit or impact will it have for Philly?
I mean, I think it's a perfectly fine move for Philly because the initial report said that there was a return in the works if he didn't find a strong market in free agency. So, I mean, fast forward a couple of weeks, you see that he didn't have much of a market. I don't think he was linked to any other team. So it's just there were no terms revealed with this one-year deal. So it just seems like he's probably returning on a very low-cost contract, probably very little guaranteed money, or if any guaranteed money at all. It could be similar to Devontae Parker's contract. So, I mean, it's just added competition in the slot. Howie Roseman spoke about adding competition in the slot. So, I mean, now you have him, Tower Hall, C.J. Gardner-Johnson can go in there as well. So I'm sure they might add somebody in the draft or undrafted free agency. So they're just taking the slot position a little bit more seriously this offseason.
Yeah, it's something that, and you kind of alluded to, obviously, within the draft, because before this move, again, it depends on which side you fall on, but, there's natural inclination of saying, like, okay, there might be someone in the draft that you go over, like a Max Melton, for example, gaining some hype and momentum within Philly, and getting some interest. I think Andrew DeCecco had reported that. There's probably a couple others that I'm misremembering right now, but a couple different reports of a guy like a Max Melton. This is a potential move, and like you say, too, the guaranteed money will be important once that does get released at the time of this recording. We don't really know for sure, but most likely going to be something that's a little bit minuscule on that side because it's a prove-it-to-me type of deal. Does this change anything, though, in terms of those longer-term ramifications? If we're talking about a guy like a Max Melton or even a free agency signing like you alluded to.
Well, it's interesting because Howie Roseman already said that the team wanted to take the slot position a little bit more seriously this time around. But then if you look at it, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, the way his contract is structured, it's essentially a one-year deal if they want it to be. So then you have him essentially on a one-year deal, Hall on essentially a one-year deal, and Maddox now returning on a one-year deal as well. So, I mean, there's no certainty and longevity at the position. So the 2024 NFL draft is going to be a perfect opportunity for them to land that kind of long-term option in the slot. And like you said, Max Melton is a guy they've been linked to a lot. It's a guy I like a lot personally because he just tested really well athletically. He's versatile. He brings an attitude. He can play outside in the slot. He's got decent size. And he's a local guy because he went to Rutgers. So it'll be interesting to see if he actually lands in Philly, possibly in the second round.
The more that I see about him, honestly, and I remember you've talked about him a little bit. I've seen it on Twitter, having the different tweets and everything as well. But the more that I look into Max Melton, I'm kind of like, that's a dude that I could certainly like if he's in the midnight green. We'll say that the midnight green or the Kelly green would be looking pretty good. Another guy that I'm very excited to see, and I think everyone is Isaiah Rodgers. There's potential there, in not only defensively but kick return, everything else. But we haven't gotten the official all clear in terms of is he going to get reinstated to the league? He did apply for that reinstatement. It's been, I guess, a couple months by this point. I guess two-part question to it. First off, is there any concern by the fact that he has not been reinstated yet? And then also maybe the second part to that assuming he does get reinstated, I feel like he will personally, but how much of an impact will he have on the Eagles defense? And is there even the potential, like we kind of have alluded to as well, but playing in that slot corner position?
Yeah, well, I think just based off his size, I feel like he's a perfect fit for the slot. But people say that, oh, he'd never played in the slot in Indianapolis and whatever the case might be. But they also had Kenny Moore there the entire time as well, who's arguably the best slot cornerback in the NFL. So, I mean, they're not going to put him there if there's no opportunity for him there. So, I mean, given that the Eagles have Darius Slay and Bradbury on the outside, I feel even though people want Bradbury gone, but I feel like Rodgers will either compete for that second cornerback spot or he could obviously win the slot cornerback job as well. So, I mean, and as far as his reinstatement goes, I think it's just only a matter of time because Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman were both asked about it during the combine and then during the owners' meetings, and they didn't seem too concerned. So I feel like if the Eagles had any thought that he was going to be reinstated at all, he probably wouldn't be on the roster right now. But he doesn't take up a roster spot, I believe, where he is right now. So they're just seeing how it goes. And obviously, with the new kickoff rules, he could have a huge impact there as well. So, I mean, that's looking like it could be potentially a home run hit for them. So we'll see what happens.
To go a little off script here, just because you did say the NFL kickoff rules, but thoughts on those? I mean, you like, dislike, even pick and choose that ruling. Like to me, it's the biggest thing, the onside kick. But I'm curious. You know, I've seen some tweets and we've maybe texted a bit, but on the record, like where are we at with those new rulings for the kickoff?
I mean, I love the kickoff rule in terms of it's going to emphasize more returns, and we're going to see because before it was basically a commercial break because nobody really ever returned the ball, and if they did, it wasn't going very far. So I feel like now it's going to have a little bit more of an impact. I'm all for special teams having more value as well. So this will create more jobs for people in the NFL that maybe not have been on a roster. So, but as far as the onside kick, that's the only downside because now there really is no surprise onside. You have to announce your onside kick. So that part of it kind of sucks, but I'm excited to see more actual returns in the game.
That's true. I will say, and I'm sure that a lot of people would admit this, that it was usually the bathroom break. Like, hey, okay, there's the kickoff. I'm going to go get what I need to, get a plate of food or something like that, and I'll come back because there's not a whole lot of action. So at least we'll see a difference there. It'll be interesting as well because, you know, Isaiah Rodgers is one potential. Paris Campbell is a guy who's been thrown out there. I know that you referenced him whenever they first signed him as well as saying like, hey, that's a potential option that you have for kicks returning for the Eagles. You know, there's a couple different guys, but also looking at that wide receiver 3 spot, you know, you've got a Paris Campbell, you've got a Devontae Parker if he fits in that role, if he's going to be more of outside, who knows. Some other guys from recent, or I guess, you know, prior signings, even guys that may be on the practice squad. But to kind of also, again, put you on the spot, but as far as where the wide receiver 3 position is, do you feel like the Eagles wide receiver 3 starter is currently on the roster right now?
Based on the interest that they've shown in a lot of wide receivers in the draft, I'd honestly say that they're not because I feel like just because of how deep this wide receiver class is, I feel like the Eagles will be able to get some really good value at some point in the draft. I mean, Anaya Smith seems like a guy that they're really high on, and he's kind of a similar player to Paris Campbell. So maybe they would roll with Campbell this season and then Smith would take over moving forward. But I mean, they also showed interest in Brendan Rice, who we ever talked about on a previous episode, who kind of offers a different play style, a bigger body, but he's just a touchdown machine and would help in that area where he's a great blocker. He gives maximum effort at all times, kind of the complete opposite of Quez Watkins. So, I mean, personally, I think they should take a receiver pretty early in the draft, given how expensive the position is getting as well. But I mean, Paris Campbell, if I did have to choose anybody on the current roster, Campbell would probably be the guy to be the wide receiver 3.
That's fair. I could certainly see that. I also just, I can't help but, you know, you say someone the exact opposite of Quez Watkins, and it's probably, you know, too often it's a weekly thing, but still, like, you know, if you tell me it's someone who's not Quez Watkins, then I automatically go, okay, I'm interested. I would love to see this person here. So Brendan Rice, that's a name potential. Also, like you said, Anaya Smith, Texas A&M receiver, has a lot to like. The more highlights and clips and footage of the film that I've watched of him too, it's like, okay, you talk about a guy who can be physical, who can be versatile, used in a bunch of different ways, certainly with a Kellen Moore type of offense. I get interested in him as well. Jaquan Jackson has been, I believe, with Tulane mentioned and referenced. I don't think there's anything more official of like I don't believe a top 30 visit, but there's at least some rumored interest there. Do you feel like this, based on his game, anything aligned there for the Eagles or any other prospects, I guess, right now?
He's a very similar player to Smith in terms of he's a bit smaller, probably will just be strictly a slot receiver in the next level. But Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky is a guy that I really like. And I feel the Eagles have shown some interest in him. I think they spoke to him a few times, but no 30 visit or anything like that. But he's just a guy that's drawn comparisons to Deebo Samuel, who I know is a a bit of a controversial figure in Philadelphia, but Corley is just a beast after the catch. So I feel like he would kind of flourish in Kellen Moore's offense, where he can kind of take those short crossing routes to the house or just gain extra yards after the catch. So he's someone I think to watch on day 2 potentially for the Eagles to fill that wide receiver 3 spot.
I love the yak, especially if we're going to get that for wide receiver 3, because we haven't seen that. Again, like we say, there's other options too. And you brought up, so I got to ask you, because I saw this on Twitter, you brought up a very interesting possibility for the wide receiver 3. There's great options, like you're saying here, depth in the draft, guys that you can go and get. Love the versatility too of, the rookie contracts and all that stuff that I think most people understand. But if there's an opportunity to take advantage of someone's surplus, perhaps, or Howie Roseman going out and making trades, he's never opposed to doing that. And there was a pretty big shakeup naturally with the wide receiver market whenever Stefon Diggs was traded to the Houston Texans. Little stranger of a contract situation there after the fact. Initially, it didn't look like as great of a trade. Now it maybe was somewhat better for Buffalo. But nonetheless, the Texans are saying, hey, we're going for it. We're going to take Stefon Diggs and try to make this thing work. You brought up Metchie, John Metchie from the Texans, or at the Texans, as a possibility for the Eagles there. Why does that make sense? And talk me through that too for people that maybe have not either thought about that or taken a look at it so far. But would this make sense for Philly and potentially going after an acquisition there via trade?
I just feel like you mentioned, the Texans just have a surplus of receivers because they have Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. They brought back Noah Brown. So now Metchie is basically their 5th receiver at best. And they only used him sparingly last season without Stefon Diggs there. So, he's kind of a guy that he played with DeVonta Smith, has a great relationship with Smith, who he should receive a big extension this offseason. So, that relationship is notable, especially if potentially A.J. Brown years down the road is going to be gone. I feel like having somebody that Smith has a bond with could help. And Metchie, he has 2 years left in his rookie deal. It's not going to be a huge risk. And the Texans might be willing to just part with him for maybe a late day 3 pick swap or something like that, because if they have no plans to use him and they could potentially take another receiver in this year's draft, then Metchie could kind of move on and get a bigger opportunity in Philadelphia, because he kind of provides the things that we said those other receivers in the draft provide that Philadelphia has been looking at, where he's a shiftier guy. He can take the top off a defense, but he's also great after the catch as well. So, I think it's worth taking a risk and taking a chance on for what would likely be a late pick swap or something in that area.
Wouldn't be too bad. Get a former 2nd-round pick. I know that there hasn't been as much productivity, but naturally, for those that don't remember, the leukemia, I believe, was the initial diagnosis, fought through that. Great story to overcome it and actually even get back on the field. But to your point, if you're 5th string on the roster, then maybe there's not much value there, not as much, and so you trade a late day or a day 3 pick and get that back. So I'm not opposed, again, with Smitty, the reference on that side as well. You get someone who he's familiar with. It does seem like if there's a chance to pick a college that someone's going to be on the offensive side of the ball, it's going to be Alabama. And if they're going to be on the defense, then they'll be Georgia. So it fits the whole line of thinking there, and I totally like it. So we'll see. Maybe Howie has that move. Speaking of DeVonta Smith, though, we got to keep it here for a second, because naturally the Avonte Maddox, signing there, and we'll get to Mailata here in just a bit. But the extension on that side brings up lots of comments, lots of conversation of people, hey, you extended the wrong person. Hey, you signed the wrong person. We're spending too much money here and elsewhere, all this other stuff. DeVonta Smith, eventually he will get extended, right? Is there any reason for concern? Should we be sounding the alarms? Is there really any reason why there should be, a freak out? Because I've seen, maybe not the majority, but there was more than I expected whenever these things started happening of what the heck, what are we doing? Why are we spending more money before getting DeVonta Smith taken care of?
In the words of Aaron Rodgers, RELAX. Relax, everybody, because, it's just only, like you said, it's only a matter of time, because DeVonta Smith, he's going to sign an extension. I feel like between him and his agent, they're probably not in much of a rush, because the wide receiver market has basically become the new quarterback market, where whoever gets paid next is going to get paid the most. So I don't think Smith would mind waiting and having guys like Jamar Chase or Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, any of those guys getting paid and then kind of setting the market, because we just saw Stefon Diggs kind of rework his deal, so that probably didn't help much. But I think DeVonta Smith he's working for his value, so he doesn't mind playing another year obviously they would have the fifth-year option after that. Most guys don't want to play on the fifth-year option, but I'm assuming they're going to work something out eventually. I initially said that I would expect an extension closer to the draft, kind of like Jalen Hurts last offseason. But I mean, I still wouldn't panic if it went past that.
Yeah, I do remember that. It's a good point you brought up. You have mentioned that before of, kind of, hey, let's hold off. Let's remember past history of what's been done, how he does have some time, and we'll see something get done eventually. Again, we could talk about Jordan Mailata also because, again, the contract ramifications, everything on that side. Congrats and kudos to Mailata. Totally well-deserved, but an incredible story. I mean, going from, not even playing football to 7th-round pick, Stoutland project, Dillard injury, and he's inserted there, and just the rest is history, basically. I mean, it's been a phenomenal left tackle and an incredible story, and now he's, 4th highest paid tackle in the NFL. So great for him. It's really good impact, but also it's the Howie MO of like, hey, let's take care of these things beforehand. Let's sign these contracts. What type of impact and I guess what story is that telling for Howie's mindset, but also you're completely solidifying the left side of your line because you've got Landon Dickerson already taken care of, and then now you go ahead and do Jordan Mailata.
Well, I mean, it's just what Howie Roseman does because everybody knows he loves to build through the trenches and he loves to pay guys before the market kind of resets. And I'm kind of surprised because we saw with Landon Dickerson, he kind of became the top paid guard in the NFL, but they were able to bring Mailata back for just the 4th highest offensive tackle salary. So that was a bit surprising. And I feel like the Eagles are smart to take care of him because he's only getting better. And like you mentioned, he literally never played football before 2018. And now he's signed over $130 million worth of contracts. So it's an unbelievable story, and I'm glad that he's in Philadelphia because his story is great, and he's a phenomenal player, and it seems like he's just ascending and only getting better.
He really is, and that's the crazy part, honestly. I mean, even hearing you say that, like knowing this story as much as we follow the Eagles and everything, but still, like just to kind of put that into context, like 2018, and here he is, the 4th highest paid tackle in the league. It's ridiculous. Again, total kudos to Jeff Stoutland as well because he deserves a ton of credit. To that point, I mean, a lot of people make the argument like, hey, you can give any prospect to Stout, he'll turn him into, a monster. Like, they'll be a beast, no worries. So let's not waste draft capital on the first round. Like, that would be the argument, Now, still, you could counter that and say, well, hey, if he can turn, Mailata, and Mailata is rare. I think most people understand it's not like everyone. But still, there's an argument to be made out there. So if you give him a better prospect, the first round does continue to be floated out there. You look at the top 30 visits, you look at some other interest, guys like a Tyler Guyton, naturally the top 30, but even guys that apparently I think the specific quote was that Jeff Stoutland was enamored with Troy Fautanu from the NFL Combine, and the J.C. Latham's been thrown in there as Lane Johnson saying that's another good guy to look at. The thoughts on that side, is it still going to be, because I know previously whenever we did this, it was O-line. Does it change at all, or is it still right now O-line is going to happen, maybe probably one of those guys, and which one are we going with?
I mean, it's easy to pick O-line, but I mean, we've seen Howie Roseman break his tendencies this offseason. And what's kind of interesting and kind of stands out to me is the Honest NFL account on Twitter that we still don't know who runs that account, but they seemed like they previously worked for the Eagles or whatever the case might be. So, I mean, he was on top of them taking Jordan Davis. He was on top of them taking Jalen Carter. And now he's kind of been talking quite a bit about Cooper DeJean from Iowa. So I feel like that's something to keep an eye on. He never says anything specific about it in terms of he knows they're definitely interested or something like that. But whenever he's tweeting these long threads or replying about certain players a lot, I've kind of learned to take my attention towards that over the past couple of years. So, and personally, I think DeJean would be a perfect fit in Philadelphia because I know people want to say because of his race or whatever the case might be, he can't play cornerback and he's going to play safety. But I mean, he's just a phenomenal athlete. I think he's going to prove that when he works out for teams on April 8th, I believe is the date. So, I mean, the Eagles have reportedly had him for a top 30 visit or will have him for a 30 visit. So, I mean, clearly there's interest there. So we'll see what happens.
It will be interesting. The fact that he's going to have his workout with, I think it's April 8th is what we're looking at. Yeah, the April 8th. So the fact that he'll have the workout, he issued a letter or a statement, I guess, to NFL teams about the broken fibula, and then he's returned from that. Are there any concerns in your mind with the injury? I know that's kind of the importance of the top 30, but any concerns from that side with the injury?
I mean, personally, we have no idea how that's going to go. But I mean, the fact that he's been cleared fully is a great sign, because then he could participate in all the off-season activities and eventually training camp. So the fact that he's going to be probably running a 40 and doing field drills is a promising sign.
Yeah, I will be very curious. There's be tons of eyes naturally. I mean, a prospect like Cooper DeJean, you look at all the mock drafts where he stands and things like that, but there'll be plenty of eyes on Cooper DeJean to see how he performs there. That's for sure. Speaking of Cooper DeJean, though, there's this thought, and you've brought it up as well, but the shift of Howie Roseman and his philosophy of getting younger, where he might take that, naturally going through the draft obviously does that very easily, and certainly on the defensive side of the ball. But we're starting to see it quite a bit with these signings and the players that he's even interested in bringing back versus the ones that he isn't. Talk to me a little bit more. I've got the link in the description to great article. Go check it out if you haven't, for those watching. But talk to me a little bit more about that shift, or that we're seeing kind of Howie being, I guess, not afraid to self-reflect or change, or what that looks like.
Well, in the past, you've kind of seen Howie Roseman kind of overcorrect when he makes a mistake, but now it seems like he's kind of trying to get ahead of before he even makes those mistakes, where we saw with like Alshon Jeffrey and Jason Peters, he's kind of rewarded those guys for things they did in the past instead of what they could provide in the future. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward, because clearly with Haason Reddick, he made a decision that he didn't want to sign him to a huge extension, whereas in the past, he probably would have threw him a blank check and said, here, take whatever you want because you did so well for us in 2 seasons. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how things go forward, but he's breaking a lot of tendencies, and it seems like he's changing for the better moving forward.
I'm hopeful that, I don't know if you caught this, because PFF had an article of like the best and worst moves and rankings of Howie Roseman, or I guess for all the teams in the NFL and where they fall based on drafting. And so since 2014, the bottom 5, the Eagles were listed there. And you can say, okay, and it's based on first round picks and selections, but there's a point to be made, sure, Howie's missed some since 2014, and the case to be made, the argument was, Carson Wentz, but that's kind of like, do you fully say that that's one there? There's also, I believe they had Nelson Aguilar on there as a miss. Jalen Reagor, yes, we would all for sure say that's an obvious one, and I'm drawing a blank on the other one that they had. It's probably obvious, and I just can't think of it.
Andre Dillard, maybe?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the one. Yeah, so there's several on there. You don't hit them all, but fine. You want to make the argument on that side. To your point, though, Howie self-reflect, changing, maybe not overcorrecting on this side. Are we confident in him going forward? Certainly with this draft, because 22. It'll be interesting to see where some prospects fall, especially with so many quarterbacks most likely going early. Confidence in Howie Roseman, can he buck that trend? How much are you in agreement, I guess, with being towards the bottom? We won't say really the bottom 5, but towards the bottom.
Yeah, I think that was kind of overblown, that article, because they kind of ranked guys based on, they said, I think with the Jalen Reagor thing, the fact that they took him over Justin Jefferson was obviously huge, which is fair. But I mean, a lot of the times the Eagles aren't picking super early in the first round, so it's hard to really blame them for these things. And the Carson Wentz pick was a hit, because they don't win that Super Bowl without him, leading to them having home field advantage and whatnot. So, I mean, of course, Nick Foles gets all the credit, but that was still a great pick in the end. And the way Howie Roseman kind of maneuvers through the draft and uses draft capital to move up or move back, and for the last 5 years, he's traded up in the first round, so he'll probably do that again this year and target somebody. So I think his drafting is perfectly fine. I'm fully confident in him, and he just continues to adapt. I know people are upset that he doesn't really invest in defensive backs or linebackers, but I think he's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I will say that that's the one area that, and this, everyone knows this watching, but Edgerrin Cooper, I stole him from you in our public mock draft that we had. I was as the Packers because you had already taken the Eagles, but it's ingrained in my head. If I see Edgerrin Cooper in the second round, just automatically take him. That is where I'm going with that. But hopefully he changes maybe a little bit on that side if we get the linebacker. We'll see. Let's talk also a little bit. This is, I know everyone's probably a slightly I guess, done with this by this point. But a Haason Reddick trade we haven't recorded since that time. So just to get your initial takeaways, won't stay on this topic for too long. But initial takeaways of Haason Reddick trade, and also kind of taking it big picture with the other deals that have been done, Stefon Diggs, and where I guess, like you said, Howie Roseman is making choices here. He's changing his philosophy, but Are you optimistic on this? Was it a good trade? Wait and see. Just curious overall thoughts there.
I mean, I think initially the reaction of everybody, including myself on Twitter, was like 2026 pick. What in the world happened? But I mean, then you see, like you said, Diggs get traded for just a future second round pick. And they also had to give up other picks as well. So, I mean, it's just, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it just seems like the Eagles wanted to guarantee themselves what they would eventually get in the best case scenario for a compensatory pick in 2026. If Reddick kind of stayed for another year and then left in free agency. So, I mean, now they guarantee themselves a pick that'll be even better than the best possible scenario if he did leave in free agency. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. I don't think it's the end of the world. I think once they signed Bryce Huff and restructured Josh Sweat, that was kind of the writing on the wall. So it didn't really shock me, but the 2026 pick maybe shocked a lot of people, including myself. But when you think about it and see what else other moves have been made, it's really not that big of a deal.
And also, I think this has been thrown out by a number of different people, but the 2026 makes a decent amount of sense when we're talking about like where the Jets potentially could be, because they're all in, unlike the Cowboys who say they're all in, but they're not. But, the Jets are all in. They're going for it. And so, it could be a very bad season for them after an Aaron Rodgers situation. So maybe ends up being better to begin with. But yeah, I'm with you. I was definitely one of those for sure. As soon as it happened, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. What are we doing? What's going on here? So try to be optimistic about it. Very excited for the group. Nolan Smith's going to have to step up. Zach Bond has some potential, being rumored or being Howie Roseman kind of comparing him to an Andrew Van Ginkel, some possibility there. We've got Julian Okwara, a number of different guys who do need to make impacts. You got some playmakers, though, still. Like, we're optimistic about the defense and everything else. By the way, everybody watching, listening, if you have not already, go follow Anthony. Anthony's the best. He does not live in a car, as you see, so we've officially confirmed that. But Anthony DeBona, Pro Football Network, appreciate you joining as always. We're going to have lots more content to come, more previews of different players all the way leading up to the draft and beyond. So you're not doing that. And who knows, maybe we'll do a public mock draft of sorts. We've done that on these late night sessions every once in a while. So follow on Twitter for that as well. But appreciate having you, man.
Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to the conspiracy theories about where I am now, because people are gonna say he's not in a car, he's not in a house, he's in a cave somewhere. So
we'll see what's next on those comments. But I appreciate you guys watching. Until next time, we will see you. Go Birds.